Hey, Carlos, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Perfect, perfect. First of all, would you mind to give a short introduction of yourself?
Yeah, sure, of course. I'm Carlos. I am a Brazilian, and I've been working in the games industry for 30 years now. So I started in 1996. I had a studio. It's back
Wow.
then. I right from out of college. I did computer science, like engineering actually, and then I always wanted to work in the games industry, like to do games. It was like my passion since I was a kid. And then I say, okay,
Mm-hmm.
is why not do something in this area? And then back then in Brazil, at least, I didn't know anyone who was actually doing games, making games. So we decided to, okay, let's do it without having any clue about how to do, what it takes. So it was me and
Mm-hmm.
a partner, and we started to think, okay, what is can we do? But we didn't have any funding except for our own funding, which was basically zero. So we
Mm-hmm.
decided, okay, we got to do something, but it's got to make money out of just to pay the cost, our own costs. And then we started to do
Yes.
outsourcing. That's what we call it. Back then, now it's called development, but
Gotcha.
and then we
Mm-hmm.
started basically doing games for a PC, like CD-ROM that you ship into
Mm-hmm.
magazines back then, like in the '96. Then we started to see, okay, there's a new wave coming, like web games. Then we started doing games like in Flash technology.
Mm-hmm.
Then by
Yes.
2000, we say, hey, now you can do games for mobile phones. And then back then was games that you play over like a chat, like SMS, this kind of stuff. And then we started doing it. Then like Java games, J2ME. So we always have to try to find how to make money out of new technology. And then 10 years later, I sold the company to a publisher, like a Korean publisher. And since then, I've been basically working with either companies abroad that they want to enter the Brazilian market. So I was the head of studio for EA. I helped other companies such as Lockwood Publishing in Evakin Life. Was their country manager, or Brazilian
Mm-hmm.
companies that want to grow outside of Brazil. So I was the head of business for Gazelles, which is a mobile company that they do social card games. And now I'm at OV, like Entertainment, which is a holding company of gaming studios. We have
Mm-hmm.
studios in Argentina and Brazil, and we are also establishing in Europe now. And I'm actually living in
Mm-hmm.
Portugal. So basically, that's my life. Always more in the business side because I wasn't planning for it, but somebody has had to sell, and then I say, okay, I think I can do it, and I've been always trying to help companies abroad to know more about Latin American industry, or the Brazilian companies try to help them to grow outside. And finally, I am also
Mm-hmm.
founder of the Brazilian game developers association. We founded a long
Mm-hmm.
time ago because we didn't talk to each other a lot, and we decided, okay, let's build something
Mm-hmm.
here so that as a group we can fight for funding, we can expose all of the, we can have all the companies to be more well known. And so that's a
Mm-hmm.
short story that's about me, and super is glad here to share more and to help you and the audience to understand more about is Brazil.
That's very impressive. First of all, I would love to say, you're like the OG
Oh yeah.
for the Brazilian
For
gaming
sure.
market. And then, yeah, it's very fortunate to hear you that, you have been working on both the developer side as well as the publishing side. And also you're also helping the companies to trying to going into and launch their business in Brazil market. as well as trying to help the Brazilian companies trying to go to the overseas to go global. That's very very awesome. So yeah, I think this time, I just wanted to kind of talk to you and dive in a little bit into one question: how can a foreign game company actually go to market in Brazil? Right. So we can actually divide that into many areas.
Oh
But
yeah.
before that, just like a overall question, would love to hear your thoughts and kick off the conversation today. Is when foreign companies think about Brazil or Latin America market in general, what do they usually underestimate?
Okay, perfect. That's a really good question, and I can share quite a few stuff here. So to start with, even if it's a simplistic view, but most of people, they like underestimate or they don't pay like attention is to the culture, because they like assume that, oh, okay, it's a Portuguese like speaking country, so maybe it's similar to Portugal, or it's a Latin American country, so it's the same thing as any other country in Latin America. No, like it's totally like different from all of the other countries in like Latin America. First, because they came from Spanish like colonization. We were colonized by Portuguese, and so it's not just the like language, but how we think. And the other thing is that some people, they don't get that like Brazil. They don't know is the real is melting pot, as we tell it, because here we have people, of course, the like native people, but we got like immigration from like Europe, but not only Europe, from like Africa, like of course, but like Asia as well. So I don't know if you know, but in São Paulo, but there's a neighborhood called like Liberdade, which stands for freedom. That is a Japanese like neighborhood, and it's bigger like than a lot of cities in uh, Japan, because you have a lot of people that came
Wow.
through several like waves of like immigration to
Gotcha.
Brazil, from China as well. We got people here since like I think the beginning of last century, and now in the
Hmm.
past 15 like 20 years, a lot of people came like from China. And the other thing is that in Brazil, and this is different from some other countries, people, they really mix with it like each other. So it's super common for you to have like a friend that he is like a descendant from uh, her his or her father is from like Asia,
Hmm.
like I said, but the father is from Europe or from Africa or from,
Gotcha.
and
Gotcha.
so this is interesting because, and there's a fun fact that a Brazilian passport is the one that is the most valued like valuable in the black market, because like anyone
Hmm.
can look like a Brazilian. You don't have like the typical
Okay.
Brazilian. Like I'm actually, my family part is from Spain, part is Portugal. But let's say
Hmm.
if you go there and if you tell people that you are like a Brazilian, say yeah, sure, is why not? Because we have a lot of people that are not like European looking, or so it's really
Mm.
interesting. So this is also something that if you are like creating like game, you, or if you want Brazilians, they know a lot about culture for like every country, every, because let's say the
Hmm.
Japanese culture like in Brazil is huge, so people
Hmm.
know all the like anime or manga, so all of the Asian like aesthetic is pretty like
Hmm.
well known there. So if you take games like is Genshin Impact. For us, there's
Hmm.
nothing something. Oh, there is totally different. I never saw something like this. No, it's similar to some other games or some like anime or
Hmm.
manga that we already know. So this is really interesting.
Gotcha.
There's no like resistance to like art.
Hmm.
The other thing that people should know is the social aspect. This is huge because we are a super social people, and some people even think that we
Hmm.
are free talkers, because if you meet Brazilians, they start to talk like a lot. And when you see like Brazilians that don't know like each other, the moment that they start talking with
Hmm.
each other, they are almost best friends. So it's like, wow, but do you know this guy? No, I just met him 5 minutes ago. And
That's
this is
awesome.
interesting. And we have a lot of like festivities. It's a country that we have a lot of local parties, local festivals. And as a game is publisher, you should try to take like advantage of at this. I can give you like an example. When I was working with a German publisher a few years ago, I was helping them to launch a new a game. It was kind of those games that you build your base, then you have to battle. It's like MMO in the sense you play with other people, like a lot of people, clans. But coming from like Germany, they are seeing that the community in Brazil is complaining that the game was like slow. Oh, the game is too slow, and then they were like, okay, but what is happening there? So we did this consultancy, speaking to some of the players, some of the fans, some people who like abandoned this game, people who are playing the like competitors, and then we started to ask what is slow for them, why they think the game was like slow. And what we found out wasn't that is that like in this game you have to they have a like onboarding phase that you have to train, that you are going to build your base, then you go into some battles, but not as a clan. You're just training for 5 days, let's say, and then the game really opens for you. For a Brazilian, this part of just setting bases and playing like alone is boring, because they are eager to start playing with other people to chat and to plan the like attack. So it was part to play but the game, but the other part was the social aspect. So they say, hey, it's like a good game, but I have to wait 5 days until I'm able to talk to other people, that I can get to my friends, I can start bragging or like teasing people. So they were about to like invest into having like a local server, which is important, but that wasn't the key point. The point was they have to change the like initial game loop to be faster, and then they saw a huge increase. So this is just to show that is the social aspect. So the game was awesome, but they were not really respecting the local social culture in Brazil. So it's just one example that maybe you never know if you don't ask players. So it's important to really try to talk to the players there. And thinking about China, like the Chinese like publishers, they are really good in building games that you have all of the social aspect, all of the clans, so a voice, a chats, a guild. So I think at Chinese companies, they really have like an advantage if they are going to like launch games in Brazil. Other things that is worth like to mention is the consumption power like in Brazil, because it's a huge country. We have more than 220 million people, but people there they don't have the same like spending power as like US or like Europe, some countries of Europe. So, and this also means that they don't have the fancy like iPhone 17, like a new one, or the super Samsung Galaxy, like whatever. And also in terms of PC, they like cannot like afford to have a really top gamer a PC. So it's really important to think, okay, you have to do your game, you have to think about, okay, how can I make like my game to play across all this 7-year-old like handsets, or a 10-year-old PC with a old like Radeon video board. And so there's an example of like an Asian game called Free Fire. They were the biggest game for a lot of years in Brazil in terms of revenue. Okay, and it's like a good game, but what they really nailed was the game. They pretty much ran on every handset, even if it's a 10-year-old crappy like Android phone. And then people were thinking, oh, okay, this is the PUBG for poor people. Okay, but it doesn't matter because those guys were playing. They couldn't play Fortnite like on Android or PUBG, but they could play the Free Fire, and they were spending money there. So this is interesting, and I think that like in China, also the companies, they know about it. They also have people that don't have a lot of high-end devices. So it's really important to have this in mind. And the final thing that I like to mention is if you are going to set up something, or if you are going to hire people or like communicate, like in Brazil, Brazilians, they don't speak like English well. Like, of course, if we're going, even if we're talking to some of the partners, some of them, they really don't speak English. So sometimes what happens that you are a company like from China, you send like an executive there, the like person speaks really good English, and you think that's like good and enough. No, you got to have like a person that can speak the Brazilian Portuguese. So sometimes I feel people is coming here with a great offer. They go to like an agency or they talk to like a partner, and the conversation is stuck. And then so this is important. And some people, they don't think about it, but that's a key business issue that I see like a lot happening. So those are some things that I think people should know, and we can of course go like deeper into each of those aspects.
That's awesome. That's far more exceed my initial expectation regarding the first question. That's awesome. Yeah. To quickly, so first of all, I'm super resonate with one example that you mentioned regarding the free file, because it actually reminds me of my days at Riot Games. Because when we are making League of Legends or Valorant, one of the most important thing that we're thinking of is, from a player perspective, can they actually be able to play the game, right? That's the very first, one of the very first questions that we ask ourselves. So we tried a lot of time, spent a lot of efforts in terms of making sure the hardware spec is low enough for most players to be able to play the game, no problem, right? No question. So so I think that's very, very important. And then to quickly sum up, I think just now you mentioned a bunch of aspects that is really important and really kind of differentiate from Brazilian market from the rest of the world. You talk about the cultural difference. You talk about the social aspects, because the two of those elements really kind of shaped the kind of nuance or the differences of the Brazilian player behavior versus the rest of the world. So because of that, right, a lot of the things has to be tailored to accommodate their different behaviors and then preferences. And then you talk about, I really love your example of the German companies, games, market entry. I think it's really important for any company, whatever the purpose they are trying to reach and achieve in the Brazilian market, to really kind of dive into the market and then talk to the local players, and then really understand, what they're going to do about it. Right. And then lastly, you talk about the language barriers. A good English is not necessarily a success factor for any business to be able to success in Brazil. I think that's a really great call out. Cool. I think, actually, what you just shared covered a lot of the publishing areas that I wanted to dive into a little bit. But,
I have something that I can add, if you allow, about
of course, go ahead.
For the cultural thing, because I think I have one more like example just to showcase which is different, but I guess it's like tied to what we have been talking. Because sometimes when you say, okay, you get to like localize, like of course it's much more than like a translation, but this is basic. But sometimes we still it's not now, but like a few like years ago, sometimes people they just use it's Portuguese and try to launch the game there in Brazil, and then immediately say, hey, they are not like respecting because our is culture because they just think it's the same. This is not happening like anymore, but I fear now that with like AI, some people are trying to say, okay, I won't hire a local translation company because like AI can do it and like simulate the like Brazilian tone. But the moment that we read something, we know that is not really written by a local. So I guess people, they should try to not be cheap and say, okay, like AI will solve everything. You get 98 like percent, but if the player feels that you are not using the right word or something, or then they'll feel, oh, you are not like investing, you're not like respecting me as a player. And the second thing is not so this is basic, but the second layer is to do the culturalization of the content. And then I have an example when I was working with Evakin Life, which is it's a social game. Is like you have your like avatar, and then you chat with other people. Which, as you can imagine, for the Brazilian people was awesome because we are social. So it's like a chat, 3D, a chat platform. And you have like parties over there happening. You have a lot of scenes that you visit. And we said, okay, how can we make the players to play like even more and like spend more money there, like in the game? And we started to like test to not to translate better because the game was already super like well done in this term, but how let's make some local like events based on the like festivities that we have in Brazil, because as I mentioned, every other month there's a big like national festival or something happens. So we started doing Carnival, which is a big party that happens for 5 days, and it was like a success. Then we decided, okay, let's build other stuff like this. So it was the like a place that is Brazilians feel that it's similar to where they are going to hang out if they go like outside. The like local music, like we brought a lot of local like Brazilian like artists to like perform like in the game. We created like some like outfits that were similar to is Brazilian clothes style. Then we started even to have local Brazilian brand like brands. They want to pay to be inside by the game because that's the place where the like Brazilians were. So if you want to do like marketing for the Brazilian audience, you are going to sponsor but the game to have your brand there. And this was great. And what happens that this was done for the a Brazilian and also by the Brazilians, because we were doing this using local studios. We are not trying to do this from like England, because the guys there were like awesome, but they didn't know how we think. So we like decided to, okay, let's use local Brazilians like studios to create those stuff for the game. And the scene was made for the Brazilians, but people from other parts of the world, they could join just to check. It wasn't closed, and people loved it because there's a new stuff I never saw. So now all of those events, they are in the global calendar of the game. So it's also something that you can do something to boost your revenue or your player like retention like locally, but this can also help you on your global player base. So relating to China, let's say, like I can imagine that if I'm launching a game there, I would try to do something for the Chinese New Year festival, something like this. So it's something similar. That and it's a content that here in Brazil, we like appreciate knowing more about other like cultures. So it's just an example that I think could help to illustrate that how important it is to do the proper like localization and it's culturalization of your game to the Brazilian audience as a publisher.
Those, I have to say, those are great examples, and then again resonates a lot, especially for the last example that you mentioned about. I think again reminds me of my Riot days in terms of doing the operation and the game as a service, because nowadays more and more games are conducting this game as a service model, right? And then for example, at Riot we are also conducting and having this mentality of central local collaboration model, where to your point, central team is more focused on the core systems, the gameplay, the new features in general. So new maps, new champions, skills, so on and so forth. But the local team is more hands-on and then more understandable of the culture differences and nuances. And then through the live operation, they kind of introduce more and more local resonated and local inspired, culturally inspired events and campaigns. And then sometimes, and actually most of the times, those campaigns have really successful outcomes regarding the players' positive feedback, regarding the engagement, regarding the performance, the revenue, so on and so forth. And then the central decided to kind of enlarge that, and then kind of embedded those quote unquote local events into the actual global format, right? And then kind of leveled up it to become a global event moving forward.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
so totally resonate with what you just mentioned. Yeah, and then I think you also kind of dive in a lot regarding the localization. I think regarding the publishing, I think it's really important for you to mention that every company needs to think of what should be changed accordingly to tailor the local market situation, right?
Right.
And then I think you already mentioned about the differences on the player behavior. You talk about the languages part is also resonating to me, because I also heard, some of my colleagues previously to talk about, hey, you can, for example, you cannot just use the general Portuguese into the Brazilian, because Brazilian is using the Brazilian Portuguese, similar to the Latin Spanish, right?
Yeah,
you can't
exactly.
just not use the usual, right? The general Spanish, because that's going to be a kind of like a cultural offense, right, to them.
Yeah.
So it's total difference. And then the language itself, you have to. It's already it's needed much considerations and then attentions in terms of making sure what's the right language to use, what's the right format to use. And then in addition to that, right, you mentioned about, hey, you need to respect the locals, consumption powers, right? You need to potentially adjust and optimize the monetization strategy, right? In terms of the in-game purchase, right? For the listing price for certain stuff. And then you need to think about their a lot of their local kind of like how to say differences, and then kind of gradually changing, for example, the onboarding process that you mentioned about, and then gradually accommodate the social systems you mentioned about, so on and so forth, right?
Yeah.
I think
the monetization,
Go ahead.
yeah, that's one thing now that you mentioned, and this is like related to China as well, because I saw several players, several Chinese games, mobile games that were launched like a few years ago, and the players experience like sometimes that, like in China, I guess it's much more like aggressive, the way that the moment that you start playing, the game starts to show you a lot of messages trying to make you buy something. For the Brazilians, they say, oh, okay, why is I need to pay something here, and then it's like annoying. Like sometimes that it feels that there's a paywall before you even start to play, and so this is something also that if you are too like aggressive in the first minutes, maybe this will scare some players off. So this is a common thing that I feel that some games coming from China, and they is monetized really like well, but sometimes they scare people that would be willing to spend, but not in the first minute, because they don't even experience the game. So there's an example of the cultural aspects in like monetization that I saw from some games coming from China.
No, that's a really great That's a really great call out. Yeah, because to your point, a lot of the Chinese games, especially the live service games, they're really good on uh, the systems. The around game system. There's
Yep.
so many what we call the red dots for players to click every single day. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
I think. Yeah, but I think I think to your point, it might be too kind of overwhelming to Brazilian players,
Yep,
especially
exactly.
on the early stage.
Yes,
Right.
exactly.
So totally
Exactly. Yeah.
needs to be careful in terms of the cadence of dropping out these new systems, new features.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's a great call. Yeah. I wanted to touch a little bit more regarding the publishing aspects. We just discussed many kind of like a in-game optimization when it comes to go-to-market strategy, right? But then how about the outside of the game? For example, I wanted to hear your thoughts regarding, say, a company wanted to enter the market and then conduct its publishing activities.
Okay.
What's the best practice from for example, a user acquisition perspective?